Hey everybody, Pastor Philip Jackson here with Reach Tulsa. Over the last couple of years, God has been putting it on our hearts as a ministry to find a place that we can invest ourselves and to really do some hands-on ministry. And over the course of the last several years, as we've been praying about that, God has really given us a heart for the special needs community, not just here at Tulsa, but also within our church. And so as a ministry, we've chosen to invest ourselves in Camp Barnabas, which is a camp for special needs children and special needs people of all ages in Missouri. And so tonight, on this specific episode, we're going to have a panel discussion about what God did at Barnabas and also the things that we've learned as a ministry and as a community. I hope you enjoy. Let's get to the episode.
Yeah, wash over us. Bring your glory down. Come fill your people with revival sound.
I need Haley, Brittany, and Thomas. It's right there. You're right there. Taylor, you're the corded mic. Yeah, just have a seat right there.
Thank you.
Yeah. No purple over here. Red is for girls. Blue is for boys. Blue is for boys. See, what number do you have? Your mom. Hilarious. Okay. 2, 4, and 3. You guys have to be that way. Yeah, Thomas is like, that's my mom. His mom is my sister, which is super weird. I've never noticed how awkward these chairs are. I feel a little. This is not great. We're going to talk to these three, and then we're also going to have 3 more people come up and talk about Barnabas. So for those of you that don't know, Barnabas is a camp specifically designed for people with special needs, all the way from children all the way up to adults. Our staffers told us when we got there on Saturday that the week before they had a 60-year-old camper who'd been coming since it's opened.
Was it Clifford?
I don't know. I'm not sure. But we're getting a little bit of reverb, Aaron. But anyway, one of the things that God's put on my heart is that we've been doing this Reach thing for almost 4 years now, and this is the year of the servant. It's been 3.5 awesome years of us building community, and this is amazing. This is just, golly, so much to talk about there. But I issued a challenge at the end of last year that we were going to do some hard things this year. And so let's start with Thomas. I want to ask you, I feel like the games master in the Hunger Games. This is really kind of weird. Need to work on my beard. So what were your expectations going into Barnabas?
I didn't have a lot going in. I knew obviously what it was and essentially what I was going to do, but I had already heard obviously every person is different, so every camper is going to be different. So it's really hard to kind of put an expectation on that. So I kind of tried to keep it I tried not to have any. I did end up, and it was a lot harder than I expected it to be, because I got there and it was I got a really difficult time moving because I had a wheelchair camper, so I had to push him all over the place, and that I wasn't expecting that, so that kind of threw me for a loop there, because I was like, man, I'm literally this kid's main mode of transportation, so that was kind of a big shock to me that I wasn't really expecting.
What was your camper's capacity? What could he do? What could he not do?
He essentially could not do pretty much anything. He had very little movement in arms and hand and legs, but pretty much couldn't move at all. And so, he wasn't verbal, so he couldn't speak either. So it was mostly just he would look and he would make. So I could tell whether he was happy or not by the noises he would make. But other than that, he wouldn't really move or do anything. So he was completely dependent on us in the cabin and me.
Haley, what about you? You've been there before.
Well, I was just going to say for a second, could we humanize him for a second? And
Sure.
What's his name?
Jeremy?
Jeremy. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what was the question?
And what were your expectations going into Barnabas?
Honestly, I had no expectations. I've been a lot of times. a lot of times.
Haley's our resident Barnabas expert, so.
I think my mom and I counted, I was hitting close to 40 weeks being at camp, so over my course.
You've been there for 40 weeks?
Over my courses of being a volunteer and then staff. So close to a year. That's not including the weekends that I've spent there as well. But I guess because this has been such a long journey for our church and getting to Barnabas, in the past we've only brought I think the most we ever brought was 18. And so having gone either by myself or with very few people from the church, it was very exciting to see the Lord moving at Evergreen, and just the fact that we were bringing campers with us. And I think it's important to note what the Lord did through Evergreen for these families that had campers go. I don't know if I'm allowed to share this, but I'm going to share it anyway. So someone paid for all 5 of those campers to go. And just so everybody knows, it costs almost $2,000 per camper to go. And so someone from the church donated enough money to not only send them to camp, but those families that were left behind, the church gifted them gift cards to go to the aquarium together as a family, gifted the parents gift cards to go on a date night together, provided childcare for that, and then also those girls that are teenagers provided Starbucks gift cards to go to coffee with their moms. And so I don't think it's possible to even comprehend really what the Lord is doing through Evergreen with the special needs ministry, because Evergreen had tried years and years ago to kind of start something, but we just didn't have the resources for it. And now the resources are there, and it was just all of a sudden the Lord was there you go. And so the fact that we brought as many people as we did, and that we were able to serve the families that were left behind, so to speak, at home. I mean, when my camper, Molly, her dad picked her up, she goes to church here. He said we were able to go out to eat together as a family for the first time in years. Can you imagine not going out to eat? I mean, it's the amount of ministry that was able to happen was incredible. And so I was just excited to be a part of it. That was my expectation, is just pure excitement. So.
That's good. Brittany, what about you? What were your expectations going in, and what kind of camper did you get?
So I thought I knew exactly what I was doing. Like the day before, Friday, I was yeah, I know what I'm doing.
Confidence, everyone.
The reason why I say this is because my eldest sister, Kathy, is disabled, and I participate in taking care of her. So I was oh yeah, I know what this is. And then the first day we showed up at the church, I started crying. I was I'm not prepared for this. I have no idea what I'm doing. So that was my expectation. I was oh yeah, I know what I'm doing. No, I have no clue. And then when I got to camp, it just descended into
a black hole.
Yeah, just that.
Emotional damage. I think that video is hilarious.
I love that.
I don't even care.
I love that video, yes.
Total dad thing, but I think it's hilarious.
And then you asked what kind of camper I had.
Yeah.
I actually had 2. So I had Luke, and then I had Max. I'm not sure how much I'm allowed to share.
You're allowed to share however much you want to share.
Okay. My first camper, Luke. When I first got him, I wasn't expecting a 14, 15-year-old to be taller than me. But that was real. And I just kind of...
It wasn't a good fit.
Yeah. Yeah, a series of unfortunate events kind of occurred, and I had to switch campers. And so sometimes that happens, and Philip was really helping me there in that moment. And it's weird how kind of my takeaway from that is, because typically I would feel like I failed my camper. But I feel like it was more of God showing me a lesson that everything is in His control, not in my control, or what I perceive to be my control. And And in that God isn't finished healing me either. And I don't mean that in like I need step 1, step 2, step 3. Like, I thought I was good. Like, I used to be gay. I used to be trans. I was like, wow, I've been delivered from all of that. So I'm good now. But God doesn't stop there. He wants you fully restored. He wants you fully healed. And he's going to when you take that blind step forward into, I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, I don't belong at camp, or I shouldn't be here, or I'm like the most unfit person to ask for this opportunity. That's exactly what I thought when Philip texted me. I was like, wow, you're at the bottom of the list, buddy. How many people have told you no? I digress. But just that, if you want growth, it's uncomfortable. If you want healing, it's uncomfortable. But God does it in a gentle way. And Taylor actually said something really profound to me. I don't know if you want to say it, because you'll probably say it better.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Taylor said something profound to me, apparently, but about kind of God.
You're talking about he pokes in on our wounds.
Yes.
Yeah. And one of the things that I was talking with Brittany about is that the exact thing that was happening to her with her camper and that she was struggling with is something that she had dealt with in her life. And I said, the thing is that if that's not done healing, like, you may have left that behind, and you may say, like, that's like, I'm done healing from that. And God sees that you're not done healing from that. And he's going to expose that, and he's going to poke it. He's going to make you realize, like, it still hurts. It's not done healing. But that's because, exactly like Brittany's talking about, like, he's not finished. He's going to keep healing you. He's going to keep bringing that wound up until it's completely done healing. And that's what she was experiencing. And I told her, and what a great place to have it happen, in like the safest environment, surrounded by people who love you and care for you. Like, you could have had that wound poked in a place where you're not safe and you're not surrounded by people who care for you. And so it's just cool to get that moment where you get to say, okay, this is incredibly uncomfortable, and that's because God loves me so much, he wants me to keep healing.
Just to kind of wrap up my point, is that, well, never mind, I forgot it.
Perfect.
Train is derailed.
Yeah, so one of the things I want to talk about is, I told Philip, I said, I think that one of the common comments was that it was hard, but not in any of the ways that we expected it to be hard. And so, you hear the laughter. And so what I would like is, I would like for, and I don't want to shy away from that, because I think everyone who went and experienced something hard also walked away from that hard thing and said, okay, this is where God had me this week for a reason. So what I want is, I want for each of you to outline something that was hard, something that, quite frankly, was not fun, that was terrible, and then just talk about, what did God show you in that, or how did God redeem that moment and give you something to see out of that? And Haley, actually, I'd like you to start, but I want you to also address something else. We had a conversation there about the difference between kids' weeks and adult weeks, and I think, since you're like one of the only people that's been to an adult week, I'd like to hear you talk a little bit about, like, kind of that difference and why that was difficult for us.
Okay, yeah, I'll start with that and then do the first question.
Yeah.
So a kids week versus an adult week. I'll tell you this right now. I prefer adult weeks because kids weeks, you have, what's an 8-year-old like when you're babysitting? It could be a fun time. You know, they're running all over the place. They're making a mess. They may or may not have an accident. But you know, it's for 2 hours, it's fine. Okay, put a disability on top of that, and you have now been amplified. So you have, and then if you get a little older, 10, 12, you got hormones going on, which then makes it that much more. So it's more, going to Kids Week is more like intense babysitting 24/7. Because you also sleep with the campers, so if they don't sleep, you don't sleep. And whereas in adult weeks, a lot of them have gone through the hormones, have more or less come to terms with their disabilities, know how to cope through a lot of these things a lot more effectively. So we're able to have more personal conversations, and like it's more relational based as opposed to more hands-on chaos. So does that?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
good.
So because I had been so many times, I've seen a lot of different things, had a lot of different campers with different diagnoses, and just know a lot of tips and tricks. And so I'd been on staff 2016 through 2019. So this is my first year going back, being one-on-one with a camper. So I guess this does kind of go back to expectations and like, I got this. And then the Lord just like, let me humble you real quick.
Little miss, I got this.
Yeah, so I don't know if any of you guys know Molly that goes to church here, but she is adorable. And everybody loves to say that she's adorable. But let me tell you, everybody here is adorable, beautiful, handsome, whatever. But we all have sin that makes us real ugly. And the same is true for literally anyone who has a disability as well. And so sometimes disability can make those habits come out in more strong of ways. So Molly is the queen of what is known as the stop and plop. Basically, that means you done, you sitting down, and we could sit in the same spot for 2-3 hours. And this was 9 times out of 10 not in the air conditioning. So I had sweat in places that I didn't even know was possible. But, I mean, so I'm sitting there frustrated, trying every tip and trick in the book that I know how, thinking just as soon as I think I have her figured out, it doesn't work. I think, oh, we're motivated by fruit snacks. Fruit snacks no longer work. Oh, we're motivated by going into the AC. AC no longer works. We're motivated by spaghetti. Spaghetti no longer works. And I'm sitting there on the brink of tears, which sounds so stupid sitting up here that I was like,
After
mad.
a good night's sleep, it sounds stupid.
Yeah, mad that I'm sitting here for 3 hours, like when I could have like a runner and like have not sat down in 24 hours. Like
Anna.
And where's Anna Buford at? She would know. But while I was sitting there at one point, the Lord told me, that's you. I've told you to do something, and what have you done? You said, I'm not doing that, and you sat there. And when you finally decided that you wanted to get up, you got up. Great, there's redemption for that. There's still good things to come after you got up. However, you missed what was going on during those 2 to 3 hours that you were sitting there. And so learning that, going, thanks God, on top of the fact that it was like, oh, I know what I'm doing. And then having to admit to my friends and my peers and these people that are like, oh, Haley's the expert. She knows all things camp. To be like, just kidding, I don't know all things camp, was embarrassing in a sense. And like, I had to take a second and humble myself and say, yep, you can always learn something new, guys. Just when I thought I had myself figured out, I didn't. So, full circle, baby.
All right,
Turns
Brittany.
out that sin is still in there.
That's crazy.
It's crazy.
Brittany.
Don't hate me. What was the question?
Squirrel.
Difficult moment, difficult maybe in a way you didn't expect, that God used to teach you something.
Not giving up. After kind of what happened with my first camper, I was sitting behind a cabin crying. I have no idea how long I was there. And then I got up and went to the gazebo and cried longer there. And then I got up and I was like, okay, I'm going home. I'm going to call my dad, and he's going to drive almost 3 hours, and he's going to come get me because my dad he would do that. But so I get up and determined to I want to get out of this place. I want to go home. And so I'm on a mission to find Philip. I have no idea where Philip's at. I have no sense of what time it is. I don't know what anybody's doing anywhere. And so I'm walking, and I look up, and there's Philip, and I'm like, oh. Yes, that is. I was like, I guess here's the thing, y'all. I believe in God. I really do. But sometimes there are moments where you feel very far from Him, and then you look up, and then there's Philip, and you're like, oh.
That could totally be taken the wrong way. Next thing you know, the poster of me is the Archangel Michael's going to start coming out.
We need to bring that back.
That's hidden far, far away in a place that will never be seen.
Surely there's a copy somewhere.
But so I run into Philip, and I walk up to him. I don't even remember how this conversation went. I think I went, I'm done. I want to go home. And Philip was just like, why don't you just tell me about it? And so I start crying again. And the point being is that for me, when stuff gets hard, I either pretend like nothing has affected me and I just move through it, no matter how damaging it is to myself or to others, or I just nope out and just completely give up and say, hey, that's not my problem, that's someone else's problem. And I always usually run back to comfort because that's what's comfortable. But sitting down, talking to Philip, and just kind of working through, like, words are hard, y'all. I don't know why you have me up here. Working through, like, getting to how I really feel, that I didn't want to give up, but it was so uncomfortable, and that was a game changer for me. Just even being able to say, hey, I don't want to leave my team. I don't want to quit my team, and I want to keep going forward, but I don't know what that looks like. That kind of surprised me. I didn't feel those words when they came out of my mouth, but I meant them. And Philip just kind of being there and supporting me in that decision and helping me kind of, change what circumstances we could change. That was really healing for me in a way to stand up. I'm trying not to get emotional, I'm sorry.
Emotions are bad.
Emotional.
Hold them in.
Emotional damage.
But I'm so sorry. I'm like the most long-winded person ever. But essentially, the point I'm trying to get to is that little Brittany never really got to say, I need help, and I don't know how to do this. And it's funny because when you go to Camp Barnabas, you think, I'm going to help all these kids, and we're going to have a good time. And then God's like, I am going to help all these kids. I'm going to help you too. And you're just like, whoa. And that's pretty much exactly what happened. I feel like little Brittany got a chance to speak and to be heard. And that was really healing for me. So, yeah.
When we sat down, we were talking to the staff, and we were waiting for staff to come. And Brittany and I were sitting on opposite ends of a couch. And I had, as a cabin parent, I have my phone just in case. None of the missionaries have their phones for the week. So me and Lindsay and Taylor and the other adults have phones. But I had my phone, I pulled it out of my pocket, and I set it on the armrest. And I looked at our memory verse for this month. Galatians 6:2, bear one another's burdens and thereby fulfill the law of Christ. And I looked at Brittany and I was like, hey, check this out. This is what? And she was like, oh, I forgot about the memory verse. And this was a sweet reminder to me that, by her asking for help, she allowed me to obey this commandment. And that was a sweet little moment. The Lord was like, hey, remember that screensaver you made? Show it to Brittany. It was pretty cool.
You know, Brittany's lesson from God was not to give up, and God was teaching that same lesson to our campers, because I had Will in my cabin, and on the very first night, Will said, I want to call my parents and say goodnight. And so I went, oh, that's great.
Will
And
has Down syndrome.
so I pulled out my phone, and I called his dad, and his dad answered the phone, and he said, Dad, come pick me up. It's like, I swear he's fine. He just tricked me. I was bamboozled.
It was bamboozled.
I think my favorite part of that story is the fact that he packed his bag and everything.
Packed his bag, put his shoes on. He's like, I'm going to Tulsa. I'm leaving.
He's like 7.
I was like, maybe we should get some sleep, buddy. He was like, nope. I'm leaving.
Okay, Thomas.
Thomas.
Similar to Brittany, I kind of went in with the idea that like I was going to take care of another person, and so like I go in there, I'm like, I got this. And so like the first 2 days were like the hardest. So like Monday happens, I'm like, whoa. And then Tuesday morning was like really hard, and so like I'm gonna try not to get emotional too, but we were in our cabin, and then Jeremy, my camper, has a seizure next to me. And Jake, like, puts his hand on me, and I realized that, like, that I was in a part of a group, and so I realized, like, hey, I'm not in this alone. Like, there were other people there for me, that I wasn't here just for the campers, but, like, I was also learning, like, I've always been one to kind of, like, block off other people, especially with, like, my emotional problems, and so at that point, I kind of realized, like, this was like God showing me like, hey, look what I've given you. Use the people I've given you to like help you, because obviously you're not like the rock you thought you were, because like 5 minutes later I'm literally bawling into Jake's shoulder because like I'm a baby. and like after that I was really like, hey, like I see now kind of, not the only reason I was there, but it was really a big reason I was there, was for like showing me like, hey, you're part of a group, you're part of a family, like, use what I've given you.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the biggest thing that I took away from that week.
You know, that in Thomas's case with Jeremy, like there was a lot of seizure training before we got there. That was an unseen thing for me. From one of the things that God showed me is that what we see on the outside, you know, we give people with special needs grace because they have an obvious disability. So it's like, oh, they don't understand, right? They don't understand what they're doing when they hit me or when they spit on me or when they kick me or bite me or whatever. Or they throw their poop on me, whatever. That happened. But one of the things that I realize is that we give people grace because we know that they are struggling with something that they don't understand, maybe. They can't help. And what God showed me is that what I see on the outside is exactly the condition of myself on the inside. That because of my sin, I do stupid things. I do things that don't make any sense. And I hurt people, and I get tangled up with other people. And I had 2 campers one day that they just got into each other's orbit, and they started fighting. So we had to pull them apart. And it's like, okay, Avery, it's going to be okay. Max, it's going to be okay. Like, it's just like separate them out. And they just don't understand. And you know, sometimes when it comes to our friends that we care about, when they're dealing with sin, it's painful to watch them suffer under the consequences of sin, like watching someone have a seizure. You can literally do nothing. And sometimes, every time, the appropriate response is to pray, keep them safe, and wait. So, we've got a couple other people that we want to come up and share some ideas. So thank you guys. Let's give it up for these 3. All right, I need Abigail, Ross, and Aaron to come up here. All right. You want to take the first question?
Sure.
Tyler?
Okay. I want to hear. I want to hear happy moments. I want to hear some. What was something that just lifted your heart? I think everyone who went can agree there was plenty of hard moments.
Who went?
So,
By the way,
who did go?
Solid.
Congratulations. Your ticket into heaven is punched.
That's not how it works. That's not how any of this works.
So we've talked about some tough moments, and there's plenty of those tough moments that can be shared. But tell us something that you saw that just lifted your heart and made you happy.
Well, I think one of the hardest things, and I'll get to the happy part, but one of the hardest things is day one when you don't know your camper and your camper doesn't know you. And that's definitely like very shocking, and that's like the hardest day, I think. But eventually you get to learn your camper and they like are familiar with you. And so there's plenty of fun moments with my camper. Her name was Amelia. She was completely wheelchair bound. She was nonverbal. She was 7 with like a mental age of 2. So she had no idea what was going on. But she was the sweetest. She was usually in a good mood. She had a few meltdowns. But one of the sweetest moments was when she like understood that I was there for her, and she like became familiar with me, like we were buds. But one day she got so tired all the time. We just did so much stuff, she couldn't handle it all. But we're supposed to go to the game room and like play for the afternoon. And she's like wiped out. We just woke her up from her nap. She's not having a good time. She's like, why did you bring me here? But we get into the room and I sit down on a chair and I was talking to her. I was like, do you want to come and sit with me? And so I just unbuckled her wheelchair and she like ran up. She could still walk, but she just needed assistance most of the time. But she like ran up onto the couch and like laid in my lap and fell asleep. And I was like, she loves me. And that was genuinely the sweetest moment for me at camp, was when she just laid there. We just laid on the couch for an hour. So, yeah.
Aaron?
Okay, we're going on the line, I guess. All right, so my camper, his name is Avery. He's 13 and has autism, nonverbal, mainly talked through an iPad with a little app on it, and some hand motions that he kind of came up with on his own and stuff. Something that became very apparent quickly for me is that the saved videos that he has on his iPad to kind of occupy his time or whatever, he had specific moments that he really, really enjoyed and would rewind multiple times, so much so that I got things memorized. So there were plenty of times when either he didn't have his iPad or he did, whatever the case, that I would do it with him. And so there were moments when he was upset with something or whatever, and I would say, I know, Avery, I know you're upset right now, but can we do show and tell right now? And so he would almost immediately go and watch Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. That was a show and tell episode, and I had this little part memorized that I would do with him. I don't know if I want to do it right now, but
do it.
Please.
Do it. Yes.
Do it.
I can't do a very good Mickey Mouse, but he says, hiya, welcome to our clubhouse. Today, everyone is bringing over their favorite shapes so we can have, and I did this little motion, but I would go, show and tell with shapes. And he would do that with me. And then he would get really excited about this part where Mickey hears a sound outside. He goes, whoa, what's that sound? And so he never does this. Avery never did this. He would just do this. But whenever he did it, he didn't smile a whole lot through camp. But most times when he was ready for it, he would go, and it was so great to see that when there were so many other moments when he's stressed out. He had a lot of different things that he could get at home that he couldn't get here. He loves power tools for some reason. And so he'd be constantly pressing buttons of like, can we go see a lawnmower? Can we go see a leaf blower? I'm like, we'll see. I don't know. We'll see if they're doing lawn work today.
Can we talk about the screwdriver too?
The screwdriver, yes. We're going off track. But his mom let him bring 2 screwdrivers so that he could be able to replace his batteries in his toys.
One was like this long.
Well, the thing is,
Mom,
we
it's
have
a
very
ship.
explicit instructions of no weapons to camp. That's considered a deadly weapon, especially with some of our campers that didn't have a good time towards the end of the week and were throwing things. So very quickly, after I let him change his batteries a couple times, we're like, we need to go ahead and put that away. So there were a couple times when he would be like, screwdriver, where's my screwdriver? Pressing his iPad button, and I'm like, I can fix your batteries for you. How about that? So I'd go to the back, I'd take it out of this little lockbox, fix it, and bring it back to him. He'd be happy. But the main thing was just whenever he was upset about something, I could usually distract him for a little bit, and most times he would smile, getting to do show and tell with me. And that was such a great thing to be able to do and was a lot of fun. So, that's great, Ross.
All right. Isaac Gamble, he is my third camper that I've had in my 4-year experience at Camp Barnabas. He had autism as well, but he could speak, though with a bit of a stutter. And he... When I first met him, I started having a small, try to do some small talk with him as I'm going. And as I was talking, he just looked at me and said, "You sound like an outlaw." It was fun. I think we were going.
Because your deep oaky accent?
Or southern accent or something like that. So it was funny to me.
Okay.
Or whatever. I don't know. And I would have to say I had 2 favorite moments during camp. So I really don't. So his thing was he had a history of having a seizure back in 2017, and so the parents put on there that he had a seizure disability and they're unpredictable, and so it kind of freaked me out a little bit because I'm like, oh no, he's going to have a seizure during this week or whatever. And most of that was supposedly his seizure was caused by him getting overheated outside or whatever, and so his and it didn't help that it was like 100-degree weather at camp. It did not help. But the thing is, so he loved water activities, so that helped, which would help keep him cool, and also it's best to you keep in the shade or any place in AC. One day we were at the lake there. So at Camp Barnabas right now, the pool was under construction because they were rebuilding it or whatever. So they had a lake that we get to do water stuff. And it was the day, it was a weird day because at first we were supposed to do fishing, but then it got switched around, and so we did paddle boating and canoeing. And Isaac wanted paddle boat first, and so we did that. And since it was hot, but one thing that I figured out real quick was there was a fountain right in the middle of the lake, and I decided we'd just go under it. And it was a win-win because it kept him cool because it got him wet, and he wet, of course. But he also really enjoyed it going underneath the fountain as well, and so I did that multiple times. And then he wanted to do the canoes, and we did that. And I did that a few times, and he just had a blast. The second time that the best moment would have to be just after the week was done, like at the last day, he gave me 2 hugs. He never hugged me or anything like that, but he just, at random, just gave me 2 side hugs, and I was like, thanks, buddy, thanks. But I would have to, I even reflected, like on the last day, full day, I reflected on the whole thing, my experience at Camp Barnabas and everything like that. I just have to say that God was gracious enough to give me my best camper so far. So.
Okay, we're running out of time, but I want to ask one more question for all 3 of you, and then Taylor has something he wants to share. So, quickly, what from this last week, what did you learn about God at Barnabas? Start with you, Ross.
I would have to say God is gracious, but also He loves and cares for us in every situation. One of our staff, he felt like he was being really negative in the middle of the week, and he apologized to us during our recap at the end of the day. And one thing I've been always told him was like, yeah, you just gotta roll with the punches. You just gotta roll with the punches. And during that night, I swear that some reason God likes to use my favorite verse in every situation I find. So my favorite verse is Isaiah 54:10. The mountains may move, the hills disappear, but even then my faithful love for you will remain. My covenant blessing will never be broken, says the Lord who has mercy on you. And literally as he's apologizing and everything like that, feeling like he wasn't doing it right or failing or whatever, I literally thought of that verse and like, hold up. I need to tell you is like, I've been telling you to roll with the punches, but I'm going to take it a step further and tell you this. And I told him the verse and expressing that the main reason we're here, we went to Camp Barnabas was to share God's love. Mm-hmm. We are there to serve the kids, but our main priority is to show God's love. And I love that. Immediately right after, Brittany just tag teamed on it and gave said that verse.
Galatians 6:2, bear one another's burdens.
And we were just tag teamed on that, and it was a really good moment.
I love that. That's good. Aaron, what would you learn about God?
Definitely that if you are willing to ask God for humility and for the chance to be stretched and challenged, He will always be willing to do that for you. I originally did not have plans to go to Barnabas, but God made it very clear to me that I was supposed to go. So when preparing my heart, I knew that I needed to ask Him that. So I said, God, please allow this to be a chance for me to spend time with these kids and, really just show your love to them. But please also allow it to be a way to humble me. And so when it came to us getting our campers, we were passing around sheets, just kind of seeing who we thought that we would be able to handle based on our skills or whatever the case may be. And we'd kind of made it known that Avery, my camper, was going to need a lot of one-on-one attention. And I looked at that and I was a little nervous, but I could tell that God was saying, this is your chance. This is your chance to be humble and to let yourself just see what I want to show you this week. So there were a lot of struggles that happened throughout that week, but I can honestly tell you I was so happy that God paired me with Avery. By the end, when I came to saying goodbye to him, I cried multiple times talking to his mom, and it was just something that I'm so thankful for God allowing me to have that. And I've already started emailing them again, and it was just I know that he had a good time. I know that he was ready to go home, but again, ultimately, I think it was for both of our benefits. It was a chance for him to be able to stretch because he hadn't ever been away from home for an extended period of time. This is his first camp, so it was hard for him by the end. But yeah, if you're willing to ask God for humility, He will provide it.
Well, you tricked me. I thought you were going to be like, what did you learn? Whatever.
What did you learn
Okay.
about yourself? Because you're
Right.
important.
What did God teach me? But what did I learn about God? So anyway, so I had
It's
to
too
think of it on
easy,
the fly.
Abigail. It's way too easy.
I know. Trick question. Okay, but for real, I'm going to tell a story, but a quick story. So I think you go into Camp Barnabas and you're like, okay, I'm going to learn how to love people, like in a real way. Because that's what everybody tells you. They're like, oh, at other places you do great things, but you don't learn anything. And here you're going to learn how to love people, which I'm sure multiple people did. But personally, I'm better at loving other people, and I'm not great at loving myself. And so, guys, I'm emotional, so be prepared for the waterworks. I might not cry, but I probably will. Anyways, so I spent the whole week taking care of my camper and providing every single need. I had to feed my camper every single meal before I ate. I had to make sure that they got medicine. I had to make sure that she wasn't hot for too long, took breaks when she needed, like used the restroom, all that stuff, showered her, everything. Which is easy for me because I was like, that's what I do best is just take care of other people, make sure that they're okay. But I ran into this moment where I was hot, I was tired, I was hungry, and I had an altercation with somebody else at camp, and I was like, I gotta leave this conversation or I'm just gonna start screaming. So I did, and but it was like I walked away and I took a second and I was like, God, you gotta help me here, and it was really like God was like, just how you provide every single one of her needs, and know that she doesn't do well if she's too hot, or she doesn't do well too well if she's tired. You need to do the same thing for yourself. So what God taught me was that I needed to take care of myself just as much as I take care of everybody else. But thinking about what I learned about God, okay, so here comes the tears. It's just that God cares for me and cares for all of my needs. Because I think we struggle, I won't talk for you guys, but I struggle with God caring for me and loving for me in the day-to-day life, and not just in salvation and eternal life, but in, the day-to-day world. And so, yeah, that's what God taught me.
That's awesome. All right, give it up for these lovely volunteers. You guys go sit down. Okay, so you know what? I do not like sitting down and talking, so I'm going to stand up.
Should I stand up?
Yeah, if you want. No, sit back down. All right. Okay, so here's the thing. I want to share something with you guys, and just as kind of a closing note for us, something that I want to encourage you guys with. I didn't want to go to Barnabas. I didn't want to go from the first moments that we were talking about going to Barnabas. And that didn't change right up until we went to Barnabas. All right? So I never had in my head that man, I'm just so amped about this, I just want to be here or want to go to Barnabas. And the interesting thing is, God, one of the things that God convicted me of is, if I can't give up 1 week to be in that situation, I honestly should just quit my job. Because that's so selfish of me to see the need of those kids and those families and not be able to give that 1 week. So I said, okay, God, I'm going to be obedient. I'm going to go to Barnabas and I'm going to just see what you have for me. And the interesting thing is, and Philip can testify to this as well, is that since we were over 30, we got to be cabin parents. And so you heard a lot of stories tonight where people talked about I got connected with this camper. And I had this moment, and I learned them. But I didn't get that because I had 10 kids, and I had 8 missionaries. So I didn't have a bond with one kid and that gratified me in some way. And so right about Wednesday, I'm sitting there praying and just saying, God, why am I here? This sucks. And I don't want to be here, and I haven't wanted to be here, and I don't know why I'm here. but I knew I was supposed to be there. Well, in my cabin, we had 6 evergreen missionaries and 2 missionaries that came from just from other places. And one of those missionaries, his name was Jackson. And Jackson is actually watching us on live stream right now. And Jackson gave me permission to share this with you guys. He came up to me on Wednesday, and we had not really talked. We had not hung out. I mean, we're so busy. And he came up to me, and he just said, "Hey, can I talk with you later?" And I'm like, am I in trouble? And I was just like, yeah, sure, So we sat down later that night, and I mean, we sat down at 10:15. It's bedtime, and we're just like, okay, I guess we're talking now, And the first thing he said to me was, he said, "Hey, I just feel like I need a relationship with church, and I really don't know how to do that." And I said, okay, let's take church out of the equation for a second. Tell me about your relationship with God. And he said, well, I believe that God has guided my life. I said, okay, if there was a third person here and you had to tell them how to get to heaven, what would you say? And he said, try to live your life the way that God wants you to. And I said, okay, now I know where we are. And I sat there with Jackson and I walked him. I literally used this VBS bracelet and I walked him through the gospel, one beat at a time. And I said to him, if we went skydiving and your parachute was loose, would you want me to tell you? He said, yeah. I said, this is me telling you that your parachute is loose. And I said, do you want me to introduce you to God for the first time in your life? And he said, yeah. And so we got to pray that night, and he got to change his entire eternity, right? And then, of course, I walk away from that conversation, and I'm like, man, I hope that was genuine. I hope that bears fruit. I hope that he met Jesus tonight. That wasn't just him praying words, right? And on Sunday, I got this email, and I'm not going to read you this whole thing, but I'm going to read you just a part of it. He said, Taylor, I just want to reach out to thank you. I've spent the last day reflecting on my camp experience this year, and it's truly been mind-blowing. He said, I don't know if I told you this, but I truly was not born to be here. I was actually born in Vietnam and lived in an orphanage until I was 4 months old, and I was adopted by my family and brought to the States. The same goes with my brother, who was adopted from Korea just a few years after me. These are just 2 in a mile-long list of things that needed to happen in my life for me to end up at Camp Barnabas, Term 6, Cabin 7, 2022. From being adopted, to getting my brother, to losing my brother, to meeting Ethan, which was his camper, to going to camp, to switching from cabin B9 to B7, and the list goes on. And I truly feel that God led me to you so you could lead me to him, and that is incredible. You guys, I didn't do anything special. I just went exactly where God told me to go. I wasn't even happy about it. And God let me have a conversation with somebody that he has spent his entire life guiding so that we could sit in those rocking chairs at 10:30 at night and he could meet Jesus. Listen, don't make these decisions based on what you can see, based on what you know. Because if that were the case, I would not have gone to Barnabas. Obey God and put Christ on display, and he will change people's hearts and souls and save them. And Jackson, he's going to be with us in heaven now. And that's incredible. And I got to be a part of it. So next year when Barnabas comes around, if you feel like God is tugging on your heart to be there, obey. Okay, I'll pray for us.
Yeah, I do. Before we go, one of our community is leaving us to go to the 405. Not the 405 window. Like you could call the 405 window. No. Krista is leaving. She has taken a position with BCM down at UCO. And so she is moving next week down to Edmond. Before we finish, I want to pray for her because we are commissioning her as a missionary to Edmond, Oklahoma. If you guys haven't had conversations with her about helping support her and how to complete what God's called her to do, I would encourage you to do that because she still needs some financial support. And something as simple as setting up an automatic draft out of your bank account of $10 a month can be a game changer. And if that's the case, then that means that you can have fingerprints on what God does in Edmond. So we're going to pray for Krista. Before we do that, I want to take just a second. I'm not going to take forever. I know it's already 8:30. But I told you the first this year that we're going to do real things and hard things as Reach. We're going to have fun. We still have a lot of fun things to do this summer. We've got our pool party next month. We have movie nights, fun things, fellowships. But you guys know that I trust you to do hard things. I know that you can do hard things, dangerous things, that God is doing real things in your life, and that's worth building a life on. And what we experienced at Barnabas last week is only the beginning. This group of 70 plus people is only the beginning. Sunday school of almost 60 people is only the beginning of what God is doing. We have an opportunity to really reach our generation. The reason why we call this ministry Reach is because there are young adults everywhere. In the Tulsa metro alone, there are 100,000 people between the ages of 18 and 35. That means that we could fill every church with millennials and Gen Z and still not have enough room. So here's my encouragement to you. If you're new to Reach, if you've been coming for a little while, if you've been sitting on the edges, wondering how or whether or not you should plug in, I want to challenge you to do hard things and do life with us. Come be a part of what God's doing on Sunday mornings. Come be a part of what God's doing on Tuesday nights. He's up to something here. He's doing something awesome. That's true with our partnerships with the TCC BCM. That's true with other churches. Through the gathering, it's just awesome to see what God's doing. And I want to invite you to come just do life with me and Taylor and the rest of us. This is a special place, and God's doing some special things.
Hey guys, this is Philip Jackson, pastor to young adults at Evergreen Baptist Church. I want to invite you to come to Reach. We meet every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. at Evergreen Church in South Tulsa, just east of Mingo on 111th Street. The mission of Reach Tulsa is to cultivate a young adult community that's defined by real transformation and the sincere pursuit of a godly life through training in biblical disciplines, personal development, and intentionally transitioning into independence as mature members of the body of Christ. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to like and subscribe to our content. We're available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Reach Young Adult Ministry is a part of Evergreen Baptist Church in Tulsa, Oklahoma. For more information and additional lessons, please visit our website, evergreenbc.org.